Colonel Reeves has and can anticipate a lot of your questions. He has a statement he wants to make. Additionally, I assume you fellows and ladies know that he had an extensive interview with Speaker Schexnayder that was tape recorded and provided to the Speaker to do anything he wanted with. So I guess you guys have that.
I'm aware of it.
As well as some documents.
I'm aware of it.
Okay.
But I assume you know that we're here to answer the questions of the committee today.
We're not, sir, we're happy to answer the questions. He drove down here to do it.
Sure, no, I know.
I was just letting you know
we're aware.
That guided some of your questions.
No,
that
but we want to be done in public record. Thank you for that comment. And this is how it's going to work. You represent Mr. Colonel Reeves. If you want to testify on your own, Mr. Unglesby, you're going to have to go at the end after Mrs. Greene.
I have nothing to testify to. I was just making y'all aware of that.
If you interrupt me again, we're going to have an issue. My point being is, Mr. Reeves, I'm going to let you ask Mr. Unglesby any question you need to. He's here to advise you.
Yes, sir.
But I'm laying out the ground rules that Mr. Unglesby is here to advise you. If there's any other testimony he would like to give, like he just did, it'll have to be done at the end. That's all.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to let you read your statement. There's no problem with that. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, sir. Good morning. I came here voluntarily to answer questions and clear up some confusion.
Thanks.
I could not attend the original Senate hearing because at the time there was, to my knowledge, an active state criminal case and federal cases going on. Since the Senate hearing, the district attorney and other members of state police have appeared before committees. The federal government has advised that my conduct plays no role in anything that they are investigating. Consequently, there is no longer any impediment to my appearance. As a proud 31-year veteran of the Louisiana State Police and a former colonel, I felt obliged to come and see what I can offer to this group. I will start with the most obvious issues. The state police do not now and have not ever condoned any use of force beyond that necessary to protect the public we serve and the officers offering that protection. There was no effort, to my knowledge, to cover up nor mislead anyone about the events surrounding Ronald Greene. The original event, in fact, was released by state police to the news media the morning of the incident. I was informed that morning of the events as we knew them. My text to Governor Edwards was the normal course of our business. When I became colonel, I was advised that the governor wanted to know of any unusual events so that he would be aware and not to hear it from the news media or constituents or legislators. It was a common occurrence for me to notify the governor of these instances. It could range from an in-custody death, an officer-involved shooting, to the interstate being shut down, and how long we anticipated it would be shut down and when it would reopen. The Greene matter events proceeded through the normal channels. I did not oversee nor take any role in the investigation. As colonel, I had a standing policy not to interfere in any investigations. The Greene issue was never discussed with Governor Edwards in any depth until the fall of 2020. Prior to that time, the case proceeded through regular channels. The state police gave the district attorney a complete file and report in close proximity to 90 days of the event. This included full disclosure and transfer to the district attorney of videos which you have seen. There was never and can't be any attempt to hide such evidence. The body cameras of the on-scene troopers automatically upload to a cloud-based storage system, and they cannot be erased. The issue came to me when the district attorney advised that I could proceed with the internal discipline of Trooper Hollingsworth. This was, I believe, around August of 2020, 15 to 16 months later. We began that process, and the decision was made to terminate the trooper from our employment. Unfortunately, he died before the process was completed. In the summer and fall of 2020, Louisiana suffered hurricanes that myself and the governor's office were required to be in almost daily contact, 24 hours, 7 days a week. At that same time, a news release showed the video and some conversations by Trooper Hollingsworth. I was also advised of a lawsuit that prompted Governor Edwards to ask me for more details. The U.S. Attorney and the District Attorney had both requested that we not release the videos to anyone at this time. Speaker Shakespeare has a copy of that letter from the U.S. Attorney. During this time, Governor Edwards decided that the video should be shown to the family. The matter was discussed with District Attorney Belton, and he was okay with that. It was decided that he would come to Baton Rouge and go through the evidence with the family and their attorneys. The state police made all arrangements to show the evidence, and their attorneys were given full access to the videos. At no time before the fall of 2020 did I discuss the case with Governor Edwards. Trooper Hollingsworth's death ended the role I had in his investigation. The Louisiana State Police is a proud organization of dedicated public servants who daily place themselves in harm's way so that citizens do not. They are faced with making split-second decisions that will be critiqued for months and years. In this instance, information available to us indicated that Mr. Greene had committed traffic violations and was traveling between 80 to 100 miles an hour throughout the city of Monroe and the campus of the University of Louisiana at Monroe, along with rural highways, 2-lane highways. Despite a vehicle chase where Mr. Greene did not yield to sirens and lights, he continued until he lost control of his vehicle and crashed. The preliminary autopsy revealed cocaine levels of 1,700 nanograms and a blood alcohol level of above 0.10% grams per cent. The preliminary results at autopsy reflected a torn aorta and a separated spleen. I believe that this is the reason the initial cause of death was attributed to injuries sustained from the wreck. That completes my statement. I would be glad to answer any questions that you have.
My question to you is, Trooper Clary gave an initial statement at 4:58 a.m. on the morning of the crash. Is that correct?
Sir, I'll take your... I did not investigate the...
But you're aware he made a statement right after the crash?
I would assume he made a statement, yes, sir.
And in that statement, he did not really mention any incident other than the arrest.
I have not read his statement.
So if he did leave out that Ronald Greene, there was an incident of force with Ronald Greene, or didn't really give the full nature of it, would that be, in your opinion, a cover-up or misleading by state police?
I don't believe there was any cover-up by state police at this matter, and I think that it would be speculation on my part as to what Lieutenant Clary did or did not say in a statement to detectives.
So you can affirmatively tell this committee that there was no attempt to mislead, but you're not aware of the statement.
Sure. Yes, sir.
If I played that statement for you and there's no mention of an incident, would you change your opinion?
You want to play the statement for me?
I might, but we might do that later. But would that possibly change your opinion?
I'm not going to answer it because I don't have an...
I did see.
I haven't had access to the statements made by any of the troopers on the scene, and I'll go back to my original statement that I had. I did not have an active role in this investigation.
Sure, I understand that.
It's a case where I did not even read the case report probably until the fall of 2020 at the earliest, if not after I retired, because I don't get involved in these matters. How, as a superintendent, do I pick which investigations I'm going to get involved in and which ones I'm not going to get involved in, because then it could look political.
Sure. Now, did you, and I wasn't clear from the information I saw, there's two things I want to ask you about that. Did you organize a helicopter to be flown to the Monroe area to pick up D.A. Belton and the Greene family?
No, sir. I arranged for a flight for Mr. Belton. I don't
Okay.
believe the Greene family flew with him.
And that was not being involved in the investigation, arranging a flight for the district attorney who's prosecuting the case?
That was me providing transportation for the district attorney to come down in a timely manner to visit with the family.
You could see how that would seem a bit awkward, that the district attorney is possibly prosecuting state police and you're providing helicopter transportation for them, though.
At the time, we had no indication that the district attorney was prosecuting anybody in state police.
You knew there was an investigation.
I knew we turned over an investigation.
If Trooper Clary did not accurately discuss a use of force in his initial statement to investigators, in your opinion, would that have been an attempt to mislead about what happened in the Ronald Greene incident?
Well, again, and I understand what you're asking me and what you're asking me to speculate on, but it's speculation on my part as to, I don't know what was said between Lieutenant Clary and the investigators at the scene. I can tell you from my personal experience, I have not known Lieutenant Clary to be dishonest. I don't know what conversations were had at the scene. You would have to have the investigator come here and testify as to what he told you, and that would prevent me from speculating.
But let me ask you a question. The investigators are not here today. I think they're going to testify later. Would you be willing to come back to this committee after we present the evidence, or he presents the evidence of what Trooper Clary told him in his recorded statement at a later date?
We would like to get all of this finished today. Representative McGee, we can't, again,
Sure, you can advise your client, but I don't want your testimony. I mean, I'm trying to be polite, but it's,
we invited the Senate
You
to
can-
come too, to avoid having to do it more than once.
well, that's not how it works. But
Okay.
you can advise your client. Please advise him, not me. You have a quote in the that I've seen a couple of times, and I want to give you the opportunity to clarify it because I think it does deserve clarification. Where you, I think, my understanding of it is you initially told it to District Attorney Belton, but correct me if I'm wrong, that in your opinion, the video, or the videos, I should say, was awful but not unlawful, or awful but lawful. Did you say that? And can you please give the committee further context what you meant by that?
I'll be glad to. Yes, sir. I did not come up with that saying. I've heard the saying before. Did I say it? I've said it. But let me tell you the context that I meant it in, and the context that I said it in is anyone who watched that video, or anyone who watches a number of law enforcement involved videos, it is very awful sometimes the positions that police officers are placed in. It is very awful to see things happen to individuals. But it doesn't always mean that it's a crime that happened. It is shocking to the senses at the things that you see that police officers deal with, not just state troopers, but sheriff's deputies and city policemen. What you see in a video, police officers see tragedies every day and every night that are heartbreaking and are shocking and are awful. So I appreciate you asking that question, but I can tell you that question, that statement right there has been used with more disrespect by other people than I ever used that statement, because I would never disrespect someone in an incident they went through by touting that in a light manner.
No, and I appreciate. I want to give you the opportunity to clarify it.
And I sincerely thank you for that.
And a couple of things occurred to me while you were speaking just now. You are aware, though, that when Mr. Greene arrived at the hospital, that the hospital was not made aware of a struggle, correct?
No, sir, I'm not aware.
You are aware that I think it was Officer York's accident report had no mention of a struggle with the police.
I don't believe I've read Trooper York's crash report, but I would say and look, throughout this whole incident here, there has been a lot of supposition and innuendos and what ifs this happened and what if that happened and could they be trying to do this and could they be trying to do that. Let me give you a scenario here of a possibility, since we're going to go with some suppositions here. Trooper York's investigating of the crash report is the crash report. The detectives are investigating the struggle. So there's no, he's doing a portion of the incident there that has to do with how the crash happened. And so if there's no mention of a struggle in it, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I believe Trooper York did that with some nefarious means in mind or an intent to omit something. There's no omitting what happened.
Did you think his report should have included at least a statement that there was a arrest report that was also generated?
Well, I'm assuming that he would have given the detectives a copy of the crash report to attach to the criminal report. No, there wouldn't have been any problem with referencing a criminal report in there. It's
But
just
in all fairness, though, I think I need to push back a little on what you just said, because y'all know that accident reports end up in litigation. I think your attorney's trying to tell you something.
No, I'm not.
No, he's not.
I'm just listening. I'm learning something.
Most attorneys know that the questioning of a police officer starts like this. Did you draft this police report? Yes. You know this police report's going to end up in litigation most likely, or has the potential to. Yes. So you've covered everything that happened in this incident in this report. Isn't that correct? Yes. And then that's the way the attorneys start stepping, and then they start tearing that apart. So it's well known with troopers that those reports are very detail oriented on what exactly transpired, because it's going to end up in a court system most likely, and they know that. Correct? We can at least agree on that.
Yeah, we can at least agree that there would probably be some civil litigation, but I'm not sure that I'm going to go with you that he should have outlined the whole incident in the crash report when it was going to be outlined in total in a separate report, and there's no way that the two are not going to be
They should at least
together.
They should at least reference each other, though.
I would have probably referenced it, but I'm not saying that he did anything nefarious, because I don't think he did.
I have several questions. You keep saying that you were not involved in this investigation. I think all of us know that, you have detectives, whether you're the chief of police or the head of state police, you have investigators or detectives that actually do the work in a case. But it's just very hard for me to sit here and believe that someone died and you don't have any more information, or you're not as involved. Or to me, it appears that you should have been involved if you weren't. So I guess, and you keep saying that there was no cover up, but for me, help me understand why the video was not shown, Clary's video. Tell me why did it have to come out like it did? If it wasn't covered up, then why wasn't it presented initially? Why did it take so long for that video to come out if there was no cover up?
Ma'am, to my knowledge, that video was in the possession of the detectives from the start. You'll have to call them and ask them why it wasn't included in a report to the district attorney that should have been included in. No one argues that it should have been included in that. I don't know that it wasn't included. It went to the district attorney. You'll have to have them testify to that.
Well, the district attorney did meet with us, some of us, and he said it was not included.
Okay.
Definitely was not included. So that's problematic for me that it was not included. You don't find that to be problematic?
Yes, ma'am. If it was not included, it would be problematic. I haven't said anything other than that.
And if a trooper does not present something that you feel should have been presented, then what would your next step be towards that trooper? What would happen? Well, what should happen?
Well, it would actually depend on whether it was a mistake on not presenting it to the district attorney. Our personnel are human, and they make mistakes.
Right.
Or if it was intentional.
Right.
And that would guide where we went moving forward. And I would suggest that with questions about the Axon camera system and what can be deleted or edited or anything like that, I would suggest that this committee call Axon and ask them to send a representative down here to clear up all these questions about whether or not anything can be deleted, not uploaded in any way, shape, or form, because my
But there are
knowledge of this
policies, though. I don't
subject-
mean to cut you off, but there are policies and standards that the expectation of the police department to keep that data. Is that right?
Absolutely.
So we don't need Exxon here to tell us that that data should have been kept and that everyone should have submitted their body cameras on the day of the incident that happened when Ronald Greene was killed.
It was kept. All the videos are there. There's no place for them to go, to my knowledge.
So are you saying that you had no knowledge, of the videos until when? When did you see the videos, and when did you express that to the governor? Because that's problematic if you're saying that you saw this video that we saw, and I don't know how we could see it any differently, because you mentioned, and let me start by saying I do believe that the state police, for the most part, protects and serves the citizens of Louisiana.
Yes, ma'am.
That does not eliminate any bad apples or bad players, because we have those in every profession. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
And I think for me particularly, the cover up that you keep hearing about is because people saw this as a cover up, because the videos came out and it was different from what they reported. And so I'm just having a difficult time to see how anyone could say, and you made sure in your statement, when you read your statement, you made sure you talked about the amount of cocaine that Ronald Greene had in his system and whatever else he had in his system, but you didn't really say a lot about the videos that they did not submit, or they didn't talk about, or they lied about, or they left out. When you leave something out, it's for a reason. It's not a mistake that someone died. I mean, someone died. We're not talking about someone that was just injured. Someone died. Ronald Greene died. It just wasn't a bump on his head. He actually died. And to sit here and say that there was no cover-up and that you were not involved in the investigation, it's just disheartening. So I would like for you to please help me, because I'm struggling.
What is your question, ma'am?
Oh. My question is, if there was no mention of a struggle in the initial accident report, why would that be?
It was in the criminal incident report that was being filed by the detectives. The crash report is what it is. It's a crash report. It talks about the dynamics of the crash. I can't answer it. You'll have to ask Trooper York to come down here and speak to why.
It does talk about the dynamics of the crash, but there's also a portion on there where you say what happened and who was injured and all that. That's on there.
Yes, ma'am. I've filled out a lot of them.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of them.
Yes, ma'am.
So that, in my opinion, should have been included.
Well, I understand your opinion, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm telling you, I didn't fill out the crash report. There was a criminal report filled out that coincided with the crash report. We're talking about the same incident here that are going to mesh. And look, please don't misunderstand that my suggesting that you call Axon representative down here to talk to you about how the camera system works was any kind of an insult or slight. I was just merely saying that Axon would be the one to answer all these questions from a company point of view. There is no getting rid of videos. And I would also suggest that I don't know if anyone has a copy of
let me
the
ask
criminal report that was turned in by, that was turned in by Trooper Paxton at the time of the incident, but he refers at the bottom of some page that he received and viewed Trooper Clary's videos.
You talk about Hollingsworth
Hold on one second. I'm
being
sorry. I'm going to
fired.
cut you off. I do want to ask him a question about that. So you did read Paxton's report.
His investigative report. Yes.
And in there it talks about, and he actually quotes verbatim what Clary's initial statement was. So then you have read.
I don't remember reading about
Clary's
initial
statement is quoted in his report, in his investigative report. He actually quotes the entirety of his statement and then contrasts it with the actual video. So you have seen Clary's report. You have seen Clary's statement.
I have seen
If you've read
Albert Paxton's report, but I have not seen Clary's statement that would be attached to it. If it's referenced in the report, I'm not going to tell you I didn't read it, because I probably did, but it didn't make any impression on me that he was keeping anything out of it. And I'm not real sure that I read his statement in entirety in the actual report itself. I haven't read the attachments to the report, being the statements. What I am telling you is on one of the pages of the report that Trooper Paxton references that he received Clary's video and viewed it. And that was 90 days after the incident.
Gone back.
It's not really an attachment, though. It's actually, I think, quoted. Like in the actual report. It is. It's on page 2.
Okay, well, you asked me if I had read his statement. Usually statements are attached in a separate attachment. I told you I had read the report.
Well, I know, but earlier I asked you if you were aware of Clary's statement. You told me no. And now you're telling me you read the report, that it begins where it actually begins on page 1 of the report. And he literally writes out into page 2 about the report and then contrasts the next pages. It's with, I mean, I have it in front of me. So I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding. And the only reason why I'm cutting you off, Representative Marcel, is because I'm coming back to you. But
Thank you.
I just want to clarify, because you told me you acted like you couldn't speculate and all this stuff when I was asking you questions, and now you're talking about reading his report, and I knew, because I read the report, that it's literally quoted for paragraphs. I mean, it's not an attachment like see attached. It's in the meat of the thing. So I'm having a hard time squaring what you just testified to when you know what he testified to.
Why don't you give us a copy?
I'm going to. He's read it. He's already testified to that.
Well, that's years
All right,
ago.
you can talk after.
In fairness, sir, why don't you give us a copy? You want to talk about it?
You can advise your client. I'm allowing you to advise your client. If you want to testify, you can testify at the
I'm
end.
just asking for a copy of a document that you want him to respond to.
Again, you could advise your client. You're not here to testify. If you want to, there's a public section. You can testify at that moment. All right. So you have read the report. And actually, look.
I did say from the beginning I had read the report.
This
That
is
is not a
in-
misleading statement.
This is actually a part of, and for your lawyer's benefit, it is part of the state Senate's stuff. That's how we got from their stuff. So it's available to the public. So I don't know that I necessarily have to give him, since, if he wants to review all the documents that have been made to the public before you testify, he could have done so. But again, I want to be very clear on this point, because I do feel like I'm being misled right now.
I'm not misleading you at all.
But I asked you specifically about Clary's initial statement. I quoted you the timestamp of when it was done at 4:58 in the morning. You said, I don't know. You hem-hawed about it and act like it. And it's literally in the report that you're now quoting and discussing with Representative Marcel like you have a good knowledge base of it. So I'm having a hard time squaring those two factors together, and it's really frustrating me. I'm going to be completely honest with you.
I appreciate that, and I'm sorry it's frustrating you. I was clear that I had read the report. I never said I didn't. If you ask me if I read Clary's specific statement, I have not read a statement portion of Clary's. If it's in the report, yes, I laid eyes on it. But as I told you before, I did not read the report until probably the fall of 2020, and it may have been after I retired before I ever read the report.
The report is entered May 6, 2021, and it starts morning of the incident, and it says on the morning of incident, he starts going over what happened, and then he said on Saturday, April 10, 2001, I reviewed Clary's original statement taken on May 10, 4:58 trip prep, and it says, after a brief introduction myself, Lieutenant Clary stated the following. I don't know the exact time I was notified, and then it goes on.
Could I see that, sir? Because I'm not sure that
Well, you
That
test-
we're looking at the same thing. Can I see it?
This is the report you said you're cooperating. No, because this is my personal document. It has my notes on it and stuff like that. So
Well, you're
I'm not
asking me
providing-
about something you're not giving me the opportunity to review to tell you whether we're talking about the same document or not.
I'm giving you the opportunity to clarify. This is the
Well,
report.
I can't clarify if I can't look at what you're looking at.
I'm gonna let Ms. Representative Marcel continue. I think there's some real concerns about that, though.
But Representative McGee, I think that you're being disrespectful and unfair and not giving an opportunity, as would happen in court,
Look,
to any witness to look at a document you want him to.
Mr.
comment on.
Unglesby, this is the third time you've been warned. I'm about to ask you to go sit on the back row, right, the front row right there, to advise your client, because you're not testifying. You're not a witness.
Fine, I'm simply asking you for fair treatment.
Sure, but that's not your role here today. Your role is to talk to your client today, and that's it. If you want to, this is not a court of law. If you want to approach me, that's not how this works. He testifies. I'm allowing him to ask you for advice because you're his legal counsel, but that's it. The next outburst I have, I'm actually going to ask you to go sit in the front row. All right.
Please, don't accuse me of outbursts.
Well, you keep interjecting when you're not testifying. So, all right, I'm going to ask you to go sit in the front row. Please, Mr. Unglesby. And Colonel Reeves, if you need to talk to him, I'm allow you to lean back and talk to him, but I'm not going to allow this kind of behavior.
You're gonna allow me to try to get him fair treatment.
No, I am. You can advise you anytime you want.
And please give him a copy of whatever I ask him about. Sir, you want him out?
It's front row. Front row. All right, Representative Marcel, please continue.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes, ma'am.
if there are officers or troopers that were present and it becomes knowledge to you, since it's not, you don't have that knowledge now, that they were present and assisted in any cover-up of Ronald Greene's death, are you prepared to suggest that they be removed? Should they have been removed? What are your thoughts? Well, you've already said you don't think that they covered up anything, so that's probably why they weren't removed, right? Correct?
Ma'am, I'm telling you, I have no knowledge of any cover-up that occurred in the Ronald Greene matter. If you develop something from some source that is substantive and that you can prove that someone covered up something, then you should take that up with Colonel Davis.
So-
but under my administration, I was had no information that anyone was covering up anything.
So under your administration, there were no statements made to you that you became aware of that there was a cover-up. That's what you're saying. Nobody ever.
I heard in the media that there was a cover-up.
Not the
but
media, sir. You were over state police. Did anyone bring that knowledge to you?
No, ma'am.
I mean, we all hearing stuff on the street
Sure.
and in the media, but prior to the media getting it, somebody had to give it to the media. Wouldn't you agree?
Obviously.
And obviously that person would have been in the state police. Wouldn't you agree?
I believe there was someone in state police or some in state police that were revealing information to the media.
They were revealing information because they did not think that it was being handled right. Would you agree?
Ma'am, I don't know their motives behind what they were revealing. I'm not
They
gonna
wanted
speculate
somebody
on
else
that.
to know about it, right? Do you agree with that?
Not going to speculate on their reasons.
All right, thank you.
In the investigation of Ronald Greene's death, the follow-up investigations, the internal investigation, the criminal investigation, whatever we want to call it, what was the highest level that was actively engaged, or do you know? I mean, was it turned over to a sergeant, or was there a lieutenant looking over his shoulder, or a captain looking over his shoulder? Do you know how far down it goes before somebody was participating in active?
I would say the active participant in the investigation would be the trooper and probably coordinating with the sergeant. And I'm sure the lieutenant is overseeing the matter, but
Yeah, and look, I think the problem for me right now is not necessarily that somebody knew something that they didn't say, which could have happened. There may have been, I mean, we don't know that. We're seeking information.
yes, sir.
So there may have been a concealment information, but it seems to some degree there was just indifference to what was going on, that and look, that's top down. The governor he got the text message, but he didn't ask you for further details, and it keeps going further and further down the chain, such that the only guy who seemed to be actively engaged might have been a lieutenant. I wonder if that's, and look, you grew up as a trooper, and I know that, in order to be the colonel, late lieutenant colonel of the state police, you have to come from their ranks. So each of you learned from your predecessor. But I don't know that it's the best case scenario when the head of the agency is a little bit detached from something so serious as a death of an individual that may or may not have been the result of improper actions by people under your command. I don't know that it's and we've already had testimony. What was important to hear from Jimmy LeBlanc is that Jimmy LeBlanc said, I may be, Title 15 may say I'm in charge, but the governor is. Did he know about it, or did he care to know about it? And the last question, I'll probably come back some point in time, but did you ever see public media or hear public statements that didn't look like they jive with the facts? And if so, what corrective actions were made? Did you reach out and say, I'm not sure that's an accurate statement? Not that it was a lie, but I don't know that it's a accurate depiction of what took place.
If I could go back to
that's a lot of questions.
It was a lot of questions, so I'm gonna.
I'll lean back.
I'm gonna look. In state police, we have processes that we follow, and state police has always been a reputable organization made up of good men and women who are highly trained, work very closely with our sheriff's officers and our city policemen, who also have the same caliber of men and women that work for them. We have processes identified that are used in investigations. Those processes, to my knowledge, were followed. We followed our processes. The event is investigated by a trooper. The trooper gathers evidence. Sometimes other troopers it's a team effort. Sometimes other troopers in the office assist with the investigation. At some point, you've worked cases before. You're waiting on lab evidence to come back, autopsies. At some point, you get everything back, and you write a report. That report that is written by the detective, the assigned investigative detective, that report would be submitted to his sergeant. The sergeant would review it. The report would be submitted to his lieutenant. The lieutenant would review it. The report would be submitted to the captain of the Bureau of Investigation. They would review it. And then that report would be submitted to the major of the Bureau of Investigation. Now, at this point, at the major of the Bureau of Investigation and the lieutenant colonel above him, who would be the final reviewer of it, it's been vetted through quite a chain of command of what went on. Then the case is sent to the district attorney's office with all evidence. Now, that's the processes that we follow. I didn't have any reason to believe that those processes weren't followed. I understand how it would look that I was disengaged, Jimmy LeBlanc was disengaged, or the governor was disengaged. Jimmy LeBlanc wasn't. We didn't confer. He signed timesheets. He's on paper as my supervisor. I answered directly to the governor. We had incidents where we had officer-involved shootings involving state troopers. I let the Bureau of Investigation investigate those incidents and coordinate with the district attorney's office. I would send the governor a text, much the same as I did that morning. Hey, we were involved in a officer-involved shooting at this location here. I would give the status of who we were involved in and I would give the status of the troopers' well-being in that also, and that would be it. And then I would trust that our Bureau of Investigation is following the investigative processes that we have in place and we have done for years. I have that trust in those employees.
I am surprised that the top wasn't briefed often. That you guys were just we waited for the trooper to report to the sergeant, to the lieutenant, to the captain, and nobody was like, okay, let me know where we're at today. That is a little shocking, quite frankly, that there was nobody was saying, I have to know. I want to know what's going on in my department. And I think other incidents, let's change gears just a second. Is this typically, were there other big incidents that happened under your watch while you were commander? And it could not necessarily a trooper involved incident, but other things. I'm sure there were. I just don't recall what they were. And the question I'm getting to is, was there always sort of a detachment? I mean, were you ever asked, okay, I need a briefing on this. I need to know everything there is to know about it because it's all over the news. Tell me exactly. I want to know in detail everything you have. Were you ever sent out with a question? I can't answer that, sir. Let me go find out. Let me make sure. And again, I go back to this incident. It seemed like it's an isolated incident where there was just no interest in engaging and being very interested in the case.
I don't believe that that's accurate to say there was no interest in engaging. I believe that a more accurate statement would be where we were letting the case run through the normal process that it would without any influence or interference, and allowing the district attorney to make their judgments. We openly turned the case over to the federal authorities.
I know you did.
There was no question about that.
Yeah, this is kind of a policy question. This is about what did the governor care enough to ask you, and were you engaged to ask somebody else, or were the policies just such that we'll sit back and wait and
yes, sir. And let me be clear. And I told you a minute ago that I got a brief in a Monday morning report on what the initial autopsy findings were, and then of course I later on I would get, hey, we submitted the report to the district attorney's office, and so to say that we were totally disengaged is not an accurate statement.
Well, and listen, the autopsy report. The conclusions of the pathologist are going to be largely driven by the information that he has, as well as the physical evidences he sees on a body. I'm not the doctor, but I've been around a few of these. So if you have somebody, that the autopsy is being performed on, and the report is he jumped off of a building, or the report is, he was hit by a truck. The injuries may be much the same, but the pathologist is going to rely on the information that you provide as to what happened in order to help draw his conclusion about the cause of death. So, to jump off the building, he might, looking at the same body, if he said he jumped off the building, he may say suicide. If he said hit by a truck, horrible traffic accident. So it's not just the physical evidence, it's the statements. So the conclusions drawn by the pathologist are going to be based largely on how much knowledge he had about the incident, totally from A to Z. If he was provided with incomplete information, he will draw a conclusion that may not be as accurate if he's provided complete information. I think that's another question that we need to pursue, perhaps with the autopsy, the pathologist. Thank you,
Representative Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll be brief because I know we're nearing the time that we have to go on the floor. And Representative Bacala did touch on some of my questions because you said, quote, the case proceeded through the regular channels. And I think you sort of articulated what those channels were. Forgive me, I'm not a lawyer, and my background is not in law enforcement. So once the investigation was complete, did you receive a report? What happens after your subordinates completes their investigation?
Once they complete their investigation, as I said, it goes through the chain of command up to the lieutenant colonel over investigations, and then the report is approved, and it is sent to the district attorney for their consideration on the matter. And the detectives, now they have been, I'm assuming, and this would be a question for the detectives have been coordinating with the district attorney throughout this process on different things with the case. They submit the case, and then And then I'm sure they followed up with him to ask him if he needed any additional information.
And you know what, Colonel? You know, first of all, let me backtrack. How many years did you work for state police? How many years were you employed by state police?
31 and a half.
And out of those 31 and a half, how many were you the superintendent?
30 and a half, I'm sorry. 3.5 years.
3.5, okay. You know, with all due respect, and look, I really sincerely appreciate your service. And certainly the women and men who put on that uniform every day. But you do have to realize, I tell you, I cringed just sitting here, you know, constantly hearing you say, well, I didn't read this and I didn't read that. And it does seem like, you know, whether that was your intent or not, it seems like you were just grossly disengaged. Look, in a former life, I worked for a governor, I worked for a United States senator, a mayor, and 2 university system presidents. And I think there's ways to be engaged without infringing upon an investigation. And I guess I'm just baffled. I mean, along the way, you didn't just say, hey, what's the status of this investigation? Once Mr. Greene was murdered, you just...
Excuse me 1 second. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you used the term murdered.
Yeah,
nothing has been decided on Mr. Greene being murdered.
Well, once he was allegedly murdered, you just took a hands-off approach and said, I'll let the investigation take its course.
No, sir.
And in my opinion, he was murdered. And let me just preface by saying that's my opinion. Okay? Thank you. You just took a hands-off approach at that point.
No, sir. We didn't take a hands-off approach. We're
No, you
allowing our
specifically.
processes.
Not.
Understand this, and let me make this very clear. I am ultimately responsible for the tenure that I was at Louisiana State Police for everything that happened. I am not in any way trying to shuck that off on anybody. I am the colonel of the state police for that period, and I am responsible. Now, I trust in our processes and I trust in our people, and I've said this since I became superintendent of state police. We are going to trust our people until they give us a reason not to trust them. And I believe that every organization should run that way. We should not constantly be looking for someone to do something wrong. We should be encouraging our employees to do things right. But when the occasion arises that someone has done something wrong or our processes have gone wrong, then we should address it and we should change it and always be willing to make processes better. But at this period of time, our processes were working. To say that I was just disengaged is not the case. As I told you, I was getting brief updates, marks along the way, but I was not asking for specifics as to what was going on in the investigation.
And as you were getting those updates, you were not updating the governor. The governor didn't want to be updated.
I was not.
Okay.
I was not.
My final question, and I'll yield. I know you're no longer at state police, but in hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently, or do you feel that the process just worked perfectly from your perspective?
Well, obviously, you know, that's hard to say. I'll let y'all, that's why I'm here, is because y'all are conducting what is an objective look at this, and I'm going to say that I'm going to be looking for an objective look at this when it comes out, and see what y'all develop. And it's just hard to say right now. I'll let the new superintendent, Colonel Lamar Davis, he's looking at the processes of state police, and he's making his own decisions as a superintendent. I don't want to undermine that.
Well, thank you for punting on that question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I think we've danced around this question a little bit. I just want to get clarity. How often did somebody die in state police's custody while you were superintendent?
We had, you know, I don't have the exact number. There was several occasions where we were involved in officer-involved shootings, and then of course, yeah, the in custody death of Mr. Greene. So, you know, and no, in any of the instances, I did not take any more active role in those.
No, I was just curious what the total number was. How often of an occurrence that actually is.
Our troopers are, you know, we have, and I don't have the numbers with me right now. I had them when I was a superintendent, but if you can only imagine how many troopers are out there at any one time, and how many interactions we're having with the public in any one day or night, and
But interactions are different than custody, though. Those are two
99% of them are, well, we're taking people into custody
Sure.
every day. 99% of them are interactions that come out with a good outcome and cooperative individuals. And you know, unfortunately, every once in a while, our job is enforcement. And unfortunately, we have to participate in that.
I'm just saying, like on a regular baseline week, when you're just, you know, there's no huge incidents, but there's a bunch of minor stuff. What is the flow of information between you and the governor's office?
We may go weeks without talking. We may go a week without talking. We may talk 3 or 4 times in 1 week, and then we may go a week or 2 without anything for us to talk about.
Sure. All right. Thank you for that.
You know, I understand that law enforcement, you know, they have to make split-second decisions, that they protect the public, and they do all those things. But it's almost like we use that sort of as a preface to not hold them accountable, to have some lack of accountability. And so I would tell you, for me, I'm not here trying to just looking for someone who is doing wrong. But I am, as I made a commitment to my colleagues here, and I've made a commitment to Ms. Harden, who's in the back, that we are going to try to hold officers accountable if it's justified. And in this matter, I think it is, because I've seen the video just like you've seen the video, and so I've had some issues. So let me start with a little bit of you talked about that there was not a cover-up. Now, before you discipline an officer, what do you review, you personally, or what did you review when you were Colonel of State Police?
We review the information provided to us by the Internal Affairs section.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If somebody turned off their body camera when encountering a subject, would that lead you maybe to speculate that one of the possibilities is the officer's trying to cover something up?
I would say that I'd have to find out the reason they turned their body camera off.
But that'd be a reasonable speculation, or a reasonable.
It'd be one.
One.
Yes.
One, right. So I know you handed discipline to Officer York, did you not?
I did.
In reference to this incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was for him shutting off his body camera, correct?
A portion of it, yes, sir.
Portion of it, that's right. And I think you suspended him for 40 or 50 hours?
50, I believe.
50 hours. And if I wanted to conclude that maybe he turned it off because he was trying to cover something up, would you disagree with that?
I don't believe that he turned it off because he was trying to cover something up. No, sir, I don't.
All
But
right.
I understand where you would say that.
All right.
I could believe that.
All right. And so you knew that going in, but you stand by your statement that there was no cover-up.
I do not believe that there was a cover-up of the investigation of Mr. Greene's death.
So let me ask you then, to the amount that you can talk about it. So why do you think he turned his body camera off for a portion?
I don't know. He'd have to answer that question.
So you didn't ask that before you handed down discipline?
Internal Affairs provided us with a report. I do not remember. We're talking, almost 2 years ago now. I don't remember the details of the report. If I was given the opportunity to refresh my memory, I could look at it.
Well, but I'm just saying, who ultimately decides the punishment?
I do.
Okay. And so you gather some facts before you decide that punishment, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Presented to us in a disciplinary review committee.
That's right. Does somebody make a recommendation to you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you always have to follow that recommendation?
No, sir.
All right. So it's ultimately your decision.
Yes, sir. I said that.
All right. So well, no, I'm just trying to make sure, because again, here's the disappointing part. So you're telling me that you knew he shut off his body camera. You don't necessarily think it's a cover up. I'm asking you, why did he turn it off? And you're saying you'd have to ask him. So I'm assuming if I had to ask him, that you didn't ask him.
The question was asked to him in an interview with Internal Affairs. I did not come here today prepared of having reviewed the Internal Affairs report to be able to accurately speak on that topic.
Okay. But you think 50 hours was justified in your mind?
That was what we decided, yes.
All right. Let's go back. Let's go back to York. Just before I leave. When you suspended him, did you know that he held Mr. Greene down and that he dragged him by his stomach, dragged him while he was on his stomach by his shackles, placed on his ankles?
So you kind of place me in a position here of something that Trooper York is under investigation for by the federal government. For me to comment on really is in a bad position for me and Trooper York. As a lawyer, I mean, look, I'm not. That.
I understand that, and if you don't want to answer it, fine. But I'm not here to protect Trooper York, though.
I'm not
so that's not
protect Trooper York. I'm trying to protect the integrity of that investigation.
Okay. Well, look, I mean, the video clearly shows that. I mean, I've seen the video, so it's not like I'm saying something that's mysterious or unknown. The video clearly says it. I mean, shows it. So, but if you don't want to comment, that's fine. You said that, and I'm gonna go back to the chairman's one of his statements. You made the comment that the video was awful but lawful, or something to that effect. You still believe that's a correct statement?
I believe the video was awful. Yes, I do.
But was it lawful?
That's to be decided. There's agencies that are looking at that. The district attorney has not brought anything to a grand jury. The federal government right now is going through their processes. We'll let them.
Well,
our investigators turned in a completed report to the district attorney.
We're
now waiting on the district attorney to make a decision on what he's going to do moving forward or not do.
I understand that, but I think to the extent that we can at this point, because we know that Officer Hollingsworth, unfortunately, cannot be prosecuted at this point, right?
Yes.
But so we can speculate on whether his conduct was unlawful. I mean, he was being fired from state police. He was going to be arrested, as I appreciate it. So, and to the extent that a determination could be made, I think one had been made.
I made a determination to terminate his employment from state police. I wasn't, to my knowledge, advised that he was about to be arrested. I think the district attorney was reviewing the case, as he still is.
Okay.
But
so
I made the decision that he was not going to be a state trooper.
All right. So it might have been awful but lawful, but a violation of policy.
It was a violation of policy.
Okay. I would submit that it was unlawful, but okay. Did you ever prevent Albert Paxson from issuing a warrant of arrest for Trooper Hollingsworth?
No, sir.
So if he said that you did, you would rebut that statement. You would refute it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. During your tenure, did you ever receive any communications from African American troopers, or let's say in particular, because I see him right over there, from Carl Cavalier, that talked about issues of race relations within state police during your tenure?
I don't remember directly receiving any from him directly to me.
All right. So I have a letter. Again, I got my notes on it too, but that was certainly, you have it listed as it was sent to you, that talked about some of these issues. But if you're telling me you never received it.
No, I said I never received one directly, to me, dear Colonel Reeves.
Okay. Were you aware of African American troopers expressing some issues with race relations within state police?
Well, I was aware that, and I wasn't aware that former Trooper Carl Cavalier was the author of those letters.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about one that. Well, okay. It might say Black State Troopers, Louisiana Black State Police Troopers. Yeah.
I may have gotten that.
Okay. Before you promote someone, do you review their personnel file?
Oftentimes.
All right. Did you review his?
I did not no, sir. I did not.
Any particular reason why you did not?
I had worked with him for a long time.
All right. So if you had worked with him for a long time, were you aware of his feelings toward African Americans and African American troopers in particular?
I don't have any information that he has any ill feelings towards any troopers.
Oh, well. So if his personnel records showed that he was disciplined for making negative comments, racist comments about African American troopers, then you're saying you were totally unaware of that?
Yes, sir. Like I said, I'm not aware that he has any ill feelings towards any troopers.
Okay. Again, you see why I can say that this is so disappointing, because I mean it's public what his feelings were and what he's been disciplined for within state police. Some of the words, the racist language that he's used toward African American troopers. Now, whether you say that the language causes ill feelings, I'm not going to get into those semantics with you. But have you ever heard him use the N-word in your presence?
Not that I recall.
Not that you recall.
No, sir, not that I recall.
All right. Well,
I don't.
he seemed like when he was talking in his discipline proceeding that he said it enough that he was comfortable with it and said he might have. So if you've known him for a long time, I'd be surprised. So, Colonel, let me
you're
just
going back how many years here?
Yeah, but Colonel, here's the deal. You've had somebody that dealt with EEO that has been known to make racist comments and posts. Your number two at one point has already been disciplined for making racist comments and posts. They came from Troop F. You came from Troop F. This incident happened in Troop F. Kerry York was in Troop F. All these things happen, and you want all these people up here to believe that just out of coincidence that this thing didn't go anywhere. Now, I will tell you, that frustrates me as much as Mr. Unglesby frustrated the Chairman McGee. Because let me tell you something. Ronald Greene was a 49-year-old black man. Ronald Greene was no different from me. If Ronald Greene was alive today, Ronald Greene and I would be approximately the same age. And you want us to sit here and believe, and this, look, I don't believe in grandstanding or anything like that. So if, I wish the cameras, they could turn them off for me, because I really don't care about that. What I do care is holding these people accountable that killed this man, that, as Representative Hughes said, murdered this man, executed this man. You cannot tell me that a man gets stopped 2 seconds after he stopped, gets tased, shortly thereafter gets beaten with a flashlight in his head, and you tell me that that's okay. I cannot accept that. I never will accept that. And for you to sit here and to use this plausible deniability and sort of try to play these word games is just, that's unacceptable. I mean, it really is disappointing that a former chief, a former colonel of state police would sit here in a committee under oath and just do these things. Look, did you ever say that this case wasn't as bad as it looked? Did you ever make those comments to anybody?
I don't recall if I made those comments or not. You're asking me to recall stuff from 3 years ago.
Okay.
And look, we made the decisions that we made were based on the facts and information that were available to us at the time. I understand your frustration. I do. But you have to understand the position we were in. We were making decisions based on facts and information at the time. You want me to answer stuff, and I'm answerable to stuff up to October 30th of 2020. After that, I'm not the superintendent anymore. Now, what I knew about the case up to that point is the information that I'm providing you. I've watched the media since. I have had little to no contact with personnel in state police of inquiring about where this case is at or what's going on with it. It's not my case. It's not my responsibility anymore.
And I get that, but look, it's hard for me to believe that if Ronald Greene was a 49-year-old white man who died in the hands of state police custody, that you would not have been more engaged, that you would not have had more information. And you may tell me, hey, You know what, Edmund, you're totally wrong. I would have, my steps would have been the same. I don't know. If that's the case, that's the case. But again, it's hard for me to believe that.
I will tell you that anytime we were involved with any kind of loss of life, it didn't matter to me the race, the sex, or the nationality of the person that lost their lives. Anytime state police, whether directly or indirectly, is associated with a loss of life, it takes a little piece of all of us. And that goes for every state trooper, every law enforcement officer, and every city policeman that works. I've worked at many a fatality. And you walk by that body, and you stop, and you say a little prayer for their family who's left over. I would have done none the less for Ronald Greene or anyone else had I been on that scene, regardless of circumstances. So for you to sit here and tell me that I'm going to differentiate between an African-American man and a white man, or a male and a female, as to how I feel about their death, you don't have the right to make that decision about me. I care about every life.
Let me say this. I do have the right to say that you should have been more engaged.
I've devoted my life to saving lives.
There was a level of disengagement that's disappointing. Now, I attribute it to one thing. You disagree with that? That's your right. If you say you wouldn't have done it any differently, that's okay. To answer the chairman's question, I can tell you, I asked how many deaths they've had since 2016 in the custody of state police. Fortunately or unfortunately for those two people, they couldn't go back as far as past 20. There was one death in 2021. There was one in 20. So it's not a common occurrence. For me, something that is so uncommon, one would think that more attention would be placed on it. And to hear that there wasn't, that's disappointing.
I would hope that someone would think that whether a law enforcement officer is involved in a crime, or a crime occurs somewhere else involving someone who is not a law enforcement officer, that those cases would be treated with the same fairness, the same gathering of evidence, the same securing of facts, regardless of who's involved, and that the process would be the same across the board for everybody involved, because every life's important, and therefore they should all be treated the same, and the process should be the same when dealing with the criminal matter, the investigation into it, the turning over to the district attorney's office, and awaiting the outcome of what the district attorney's decided to do.
Well, look, let me say that's a utopia, and I can give you evidence that shows that's not the case. So if you want to dispute why I take my position, I can give you evidence that shows why I take my position. Now, it may not be specifically related to you, but I can certainly show you evidence that shows otherwise.
Understand, Representative Jordan, I am not disputing why you feel the way you feel and the evidence that you have. What I am saying to you is you shouldn't be telling me the way I feel and the reasons that we make the decisions that we make. And so I respect you for your decisions. I respect you for the way you feel.
And look,
I don't think it's right for you to sit here and tell me that I would do something different based on the race of somebody. I never, to my knowledge, I never had any issues with African Americans under our command. I promoted a lot of them because they were duly deserving of a job. I have the utmost respect for them.
And look, and to the extent that you took it personally, I'll withdraw and apologize on that issue. However, look, if you're saying you knew Bob Brown as long as you have, and you're saying you can't recall him using racist language towards you, I'm going to just tell you, I find that a little bit unbelievable.
I accept your apology. Thank you, sir.
Who was the commander in charge of then Technology Services when Triet Lee wiped clean Canesville?
The business unit would be under, it was then Captain Lamar Davis.
Correct. That's my understanding as well. Thank you. And then what about when your phone was wiped clean?
Yes, ma'am. Same answer.
Okay. And when was your phone wiped clean?
Honestly, I'm glad we got to this because I don't really recall when my phone was wiped clean. I didn't make a notation of it. It wasn't a momentous event for me. This has been so misconstrued. There was no effort to get rid of anything on the phone except there's no text. We rarely use the phone. You get tired of carrying two phones when no one is using it. So to say that we destroyed information on a phone intentionally to affect an investigation is not an accurate statement.
I didn't say that. Now, you knew on May 10th, 2019, that there was force used in connection with the arrest of Ronald Greene. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
In fact, in your text to the governor, you referred to a violent struggle, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, if you didn't conduct the investigation into the Greene incident, which you've made clear that you distanced yourself from, how soon after the in-custody death of Ronald Greene did your command staff ask and review the camera footage from either the cars or the body-worn cameras?
Probably, and I don't have the dates in front of me.
Sure.
Sometime in May,
Sometime the same month.
sometime the same month, we reviewed 3 videos, 2 of which basically didn't have anything on them because they were Trooper Hollingsworth videos. They were the showing of him disabling his camera. And then the third one was Trooper Dakota DeMoss's video.
Now, you use the term we, and I've noticed you've done that a little bit. So sometimes you say you didn't know, you weren't involved, and then other times you use the term we. And in this case, you used the term we reviewed the footage. So
We
did
did.
you review? Were you part of the we
Yes.
that reviewed the footage in May?
We means we.
Okay. Now, did you have a disciplinary committee review meeting on that incident and that review?
On that incident and that review, we had a disciplinary review committee in 2020, in August of 2020, I believe, or September.
So you're telling me that you were aware that force was used in May 2019,
Yes, ma'am.
and you were part of the we that reviewed the footage
Yes, ma'am.
from the incident, and you did not have a disciplinary committee review of that incident at that time?
No, ma'am. There was no internal investigation at that time.
Okay.
First of all, Representative Jordan had said that basically in 2021 and in 2020, there was one suspect that died in custody. Does that sound right to you? So about 1 per year?
I was superintendent from 2017 to 2020, so whatever happened in that time period, I can speak for. What happened in 2021, I don't.
Yeah. So would you say, is it fair to say it's a rare occurrence?
It's not an everyday occurrence. No.
Okay. Perfect.
Thankfully.
So let's talk about when you first heard about the incident. You got some kind of brief that this happened, right?
I got it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
probably got a text message or a phone call.
And so based on that, what your initial information, did you think that Ronald Greene died in a car wreck, or do you think as a result of his injuries, or did you think there was something else involved?
At the time that I
At the time.
received the first inclination, I didn't have reason to believe one way or the other how Ronald Greene had passed away. I was just receiving information that there had been a chase, there had been a crash, and there had been a struggle, and that he had passed away. So it wasn't, hey, we think that he passed away one way or the other from, one cause or the other.
So I think in your text message to the governor, you said that it was a violent and prolonged struggle. Is that correct?
That's what I was told.
Yeah. So do you think that somebody, or is it in your opinion, do you think that somebody who receives fatal injuries in a car accident, do you think that they would be capable of a violent and prolonged struggle?
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends.
Okay. And what about right now? Do you think that Ronald Greene died as a result of his injuries from the car crash? Is that your opinion now?
I believe that would definitely be a contributing factor.
Okay. And are you aware of the FBI's, the coroner report from the FBI commission that kind of refuted the car crash?
I haven't
theory?
seen it. No, sir. I have
Okay.
not. I'm not sure how you refute a car crash when there was a car crash.
Well, not the car crash, but as far as the car crash being the cause of death, I think the original coroner report, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, indicated that it was the result of the car crash, and the FBI recommissioned and they reviewed all the evidence and seemed to say that it was not the result of the car crash.
I can't speak to it. I haven't seen the new autopsy.
Okay. And so you mentioned in your statement, or you mentioned some in the questioning, that Louisiana State Police had issued a public statement the day of Ronald Greene's death. That's correct?
Yes, sir. That morning. That's what I'm.
And what did it say? Can I tried looking on the website. None of the press releases, I couldn't see what it is. Do you have any idea? Like, was it in line with what your text message to the governor said, or do you think it said something different?
I believe it was. Those are distributed through our public affairs section, but I do know that it was distributed out to the media.
Okay, and that was on the day of his death, correct?
That morning, yes, sir.
And so, are you aware of any other statements that they made in the court in the intervening time between, I guess, what maybe when the family saw the video, and what it was that like August or September of 2020? Was there any other statements that state police made, public statements that they made regarding Ronald Greene investigation?
Honestly, I don't remember if we did or not.
Do you approve any of those things, or does they just have somebody else that does it and sends it out? Do you review the wording or the statement or what state police is going to say?
I would not review any of the wording of a public statement that would be made of an incident that occurred on describing. We usually, and I guess state police still does, put out press releases on incidents that they're involved in close proximity to the incident. Those are worded by the public affairs section. The only ones that I would approve or edit would be ones that involve me saying them.
Yeah. Do you have, so where would those public statements be located? I looked on their state police website under their news and public notices, and I don't see any either for Troop F or for the state police in general that said, hey, would this happen? I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but is there some other way, a Twitter or something like that says, hey, this is what happened? You don't know?
No.
Okay.
Sir.
And when you text the governor, you took the governor's office and you told him, lengthy, prolonged struggle. Is it normal practice for the governor to, this is something, like we said, it happens once per year, essentially. Is it normal practice for the governor's office to never ask for a detailed briefing about this? Because you said that the only detailed briefing you ever gave was over a year after the incident actually happened. And so is it normal practice that when, a death in custody or something of that severity, that we wait 14 months, 16 months before the governor's office ever gets a detailed briefing on it?
Yes.
That's normal?
Yes.
And is that normal with every governor, or is that just this governor?
I only work for this governor.
Oh, you only work for this
as a
governor?
superintendent.
Okay. And so do you think that is a best practice as far as a chain of command? So you get a text message one day, and it's not till 14 or 16 months later that we actually find out any details about what happened?
Well, I think that the governor, I would be careful to characterize him as being disengaged also, because I think that the governor trusted that the Louisiana State Police, the employees of the Louisiana State Police, were going to do their job and were going to investigate this matter thoroughly. The governor has a saying, and always has a saying, that just do the right thing. And that's would be his guidance in most things. And I've heard him say it to not just me, but many cabinet heads. When they brief him on something, hey, we got this going on or we got that going on, he'd say, okay, just do the right thing. He's being made with situational awareness, such as I was, but he's not going to get involved in the case, in any case, not just this case.
And so do you think we did the right thing in this situation?
Well, that'll be borne out. We're waiting for the district attorney and the federal government, the Justice Department, to make some decisions here.
Obviously there's a criminal standard of criminal conduct, but do you think, just in general, did we do the right thing as far as how we kept the Greene family informed, how we kept the public informed of what happened? Would you say that state police and everyone involved did the right thing?
Well, when you say about keeping the public informed of what happened, coming up through the ranks, state police always we believed in the criminal justice process. We believed that those that are accused of crimes or incidents we're investigating, that they should be allowed to have that privacy until that matter is decided. Does that make sense? I mean, if we were investigating someone in here, you probably wouldn't want us to go out and talk about the facts of the case before some body got to look at it. The district attorney may null pros. He may not take it to a grand jury, or he may take it to a grand jury. We always respected that, and so we historically have not gone out and talked about cases that we were investigated and shared evidence that we had.
Okay, so
For the integrity of the case, you're getting your evidence out and the integrity of the case.
So you mentioned that oftentimes the internal investigations will look at the situation first, and then they'll refer it to criminal if they think something criminal might have happened. Correct?
Right. Oftentimes, not in this case.
Yeah. So in this case, did they look at it first, and they made the decision to turn it over to the prosecutor?
In this particular case, no,
Yeah.
sir. That decision was made that night by the detectives on the scene.
So they basically said, hey, look, this is definitely to a level that criminal charges might be brought in this, and we're not even going to do the internal investigation, right?
Custody deaths. So, I mean, we had to look at it from a criminal investigative standpoint.
Okay. And then it took...
But when you talk about the videos being released and such, I want to remind you that the district attorney and the federal government asked us not to release any videos. That wasn't made in a vacuum. That decision was made collectively, and that we were asked by the Justice Department and the district attorney not to release any videos publicly.
Yeah, I mean,
that. I mean, it's their evidence.
No, I've heard. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I don't think anyone really questions your releasing of the videos, or whether or not that should have happened earlier. I think the characterization of the videos is kind of different. I mean, I saw the video, and as soon as I saw the video, I didn't think, well, this guy obviously died in this car crash, and I would ever go make a statement and say, I saw this video, he died in a car crash, because the guy, he was obviously talking, he was obviously, I don't think anyone in the world thinks that he died as in the car crash, right? He was obviously alive still.
Yeah, he obviously did not die in that car crash, and I've often wondered, or in a word here and a word there, he died in a car crash, or he died
from injuries in a car crash.
And that's a possibility of an understanding of what's being said or what's being related. So, and I honestly, I don't know who made contact with Mr. Greene's family to explain to them that something had happened, and so I can't say what they were led to believe, or they were told, or they were not told. And I haven't found anywhere on the internet or anywhere else where anyone in state police has said that Mr. Greene died in a car crash. I haven't found that. I mean, if it's out there, I'll certainly apologize, but I haven't seen where state police ever said that.
Yeah, I don't, to my knowledge, I don't know about in a car crash, but I think you're right that the semantics or the discrepancy is, well, did he die from a car crash or in a car crash, right?
It changes the whole situation.
It does change it. I agree with you. And I think that even from a car crash, I think once you view the video, seems kind of suspect. I mean, at least in my opinion, and I think in most of the public's opinion, it becomes kind of suspect when you watch the video from every angle, like we said. But anyway, I appreciate you answering the questions, and I appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
One follow-up on some Representative Nelson asked you, who notified you about this?
It would have either been, at the time, Major Bob Brown, or would have been Lieutenant Colonel Adam White.
You don't remember?
They were in the chain of command, one under the other one, so one would have notified me of this.
You don't remember being notified about it?
I remember being notified, but I don't remember who I got it from. No, sir, I just told it'd be one of those two.
Let me ask a more specific question. How were you notified about this?
Probably by a text message or an email. I'm not sure. Because what I probably did was copy and paste the information that was sent to me and sent it to the governor.
Okay. So you think you think it was probably text message then?
I said a text message or an email. I'm not sure.
Right. The only reason why I say it's probably text message because, I mean, most people don't answer email in the middle of the night. They're more likely.
I didn't answer this one in the middle of the night. I didn't get it till the following morning.
Okay. they wouldn't have called you on a custody death with the use of force?
Probably should have. And as I remember, that was a little point of contention there, that we were not notified for several hours.
Yeah. On your phone, do you communicate through text message? Do you use any other sort of app that communicates, like WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
So any communication would have been through text message or email, correct?
Yes, sir.
You didn't email the governor, though, did you?
I believe I texted him.
Text him, okay.
Well, I'm sure that's what's been reported.
Sure, I'm just asking.
Yes, sir.
Did you email him about other stuff? Did you and the governor contact via email, or was it just text messages?
Probably generally text messages, and most of them consisted of, hey, let me know when you're available for a call, or something of that sort. Hey, there's a crash on I-10, the interstate's shut down, I'll let you know when it's open again, from this to this.
So you text about traffic situations, but you go 14 months and not on a disciplinary investigation?
I texted him about the investigation that went on, just as I did the traffic situation that went on. So,
okay. And one last question. You said you talked about the case and you're going through that, but it is common for troopers, even sheriff office and city police, to talk to the district attorney's office about the case, right?
absolutely.
So you are discussing information, sharing information. Do you know when your officers first notified district attorney's office about the Clary video?
I do not.
Thank you.
Chris Hollingsworth, real quick. It's my understanding the internal investigation didn't start. The internal investigation of him didn't start until the criminal investigation was over. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
It was like a year and several months later.
Yes, ma'am.
That was the state criminal investigation. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there also, or wasn't there also a federal investigation going on at the same time?
Yes, ma'am.
So that the federal investigation did not interfere with the internal investigation?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Is that just policy or?
That was our policy, because here we are 2 years later, 3 years later, and we don't have a conclusion to the federal investigation yet. So when the district attorney advised that he was not going to move forward with charges, then that's when I felt we needed to go ahead and open an administrative investigation.
So were you the person who formally opened the investigation or asked for?
I tasked internal affairs and asked him to open an internal investigation.
Okay. Also, in reading some of this, I noticed that he was a police driving instructor who died in a car crash. Was that something that was discussed after his death?
Ma'am, I don't know that he was a driving instructor or not. I'm not sure what his certifications were at the time.
Okay. Do you know who would know?
The training academy would probably have a record of his training.
Okay.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the crash was investigated by the Monroe Police Department, not the Louisiana State Police.
That makes sense. Okay, and one last question. I think you said, is this correct, that you were never told that Scott Davis had issues with the use of force?
I don't recall that being a conversation that we had.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Landry. Doug Kane, he was, what did you say his job was with you?
Executive officer to the superintendent.
And what does that mean?
He was an aide of mine. He was an aide.
So he would have been somebody who had been in regular contact with you, correct?
Yes.
And he would be communicating with other people on your behalf?
May.
Okay. Did he? I mean, I'm asking.
I'm sure, yes. I'm sure he did, yes.
Did he have the authority to communicate with the governor's office on your behalf?
I don't believe he did that. No.
Did he contact you and say, hey, they were asking for this information? I provided to them, or whoever's asking for this information?
Honestly, I don't recall those conversations. They wouldn't have been significant to me.
Were you aware that his cell phone was wiped?
I heard that, yes.
You didn't know about it at the time, though, is what I'm asking.
Honestly, I don't remember whose cell phone was. And when you say wiped, I mean, in state police, I believe they use the term sanitized. You know, and that does sound bad, but there was no malicious intent here for what happened. It was restoring a phone to factory settings so the phone could be reissued to someone else. The same thing we do with iPads when we turn them in, or whatever the case may be. It's not a case where anybody is trying to hide anything or.
I understand. I'm just trying to get. I mean,
No, I understand.
You
I'm
understand when
just
the
trying to
public
explain to
reads
you.
that
Yes.
somebody's phone has information on it, and then without a third party, they internally make the decision to clean that information off a said phone. It seems a little weird. Like, I mean, I think you agree with me. If you were investigating a drug lord and you asked him for his cell phone, he said, "Yeah, I deleted everything." That would raise a red flag for you in your investigation, right?
Yeah, but I don't. There was no intention to do that. I mean, I'm telling you right here.
I believe you.
It's
I'm not suggesting otherwise. I'm just saying you would understand why people would be curious about
do.
the
Yes.
circumstances that surround it,
Absolutely.
given in light of what's going on.
A couple questions about, we talked a little bit, was touched on the public affairs division. And obviously public affairs cannot make statements to the public until they get the information from somebody who's familiar with the incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
So whoever was making press releases relative to this incident or any other incident had to talk to somebody. Some information was conveyed, and that information was condensed or whatever to a press release.
Yes, sir.
How would that typically be conveyed to the person who is making the official release of information?
In the case of a criminal investigation, then that information would be conveyed from the criminal investigators between them and the public information officer.
But there would be a would it typically be an email between the investigators and the public affairs? Telephone call, hybrid, could be anything.
Could be anything.
It's at the point in time that this became a criminal investigation, there was a suspicion that something went wrong or was wrong. After that point in time, did someone communicate with the Greene family or anyone else that this was just a traffic accident resulting in death?
I don't know who communicated with the Greene family, and
Well, I think the date is important too.
I understand.
If it became a criminal investigation on day one, then any communication that said anything otherwise thereafter was somebody who either didn't know or chose not to.
Right, I understand. I understand. I don't know that state police has determined who made the unfortunate notification to the family.
Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't take my attorney hat off, Colonel. Some people sometimes ask me to, but it's just my nature. And so I want to make sure, when you say the governor was not advised of any details of the Greene incident outside of your February 10th, 2019 text until much later on, I think you said sometime in 2020, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When you say the governor, does that include members of the governor's staff, meaning that you did not advise members of the office of the governor of details of the Greene incident as well?
Not that I recall doing, no, ma'am.
Fair enough. And I'm not sure if I asked it, but I don't know the answer. Who authorized, as you call it, the sanitization? Who authorized the sanitization of your phone, Noel's phone, and Kane's phone?
That was state police that referred to it as sanitizing. I've referred to it as restoring back to factory settings, and I don't know who authorized. No one authorized.
In each event, you don't know who directed Triet Lee to do that.
I don't know that Triet Lee was directed to do that.
Okay. So in each event, you don't know who was directed to do that. Is that my understanding of your answer?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, I would say that probably, and I can't recall one. If I'm probably the one that did my phone. I don't know who did Mike Noel's or Doug Kane's, or whether Triet Lee did it or not.
Last question, Colonel. If you believe Mr. Greene died from injuries sustained in a car crash, and if you believe Mr. Greene back then died of injuries sustained in the car crash, can you tell me where is the reconstruction of the crash scene that goes with traffic fatalities?
Well, I believe that someone asked for not after I left. I believe someone asked for a reconstruction and it wasn't, no, I'm told that wasn't done.
So under your watch, a traffic fatality of this magnitude, certainly, that was not done either.
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
And to be clear, you're saying that you restored your own phone by using the little backup, like restored factory settings.
Yeah.
Okay. Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess let me start with the first follow up with the first question that Representative Villio asked. So was there any process that dealt with the restoring of phones to factory settings? Any approval that was needed?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. So if I were a trooper back then and I just said, oh, well, I just want to reset my phone, or if I want to sanitize my phone, as state police would call it, if I wanted to sanitize my phone, then I could just go ahead and sanitize my phone.
If it's your phone, I'm sure you could.
If it's state phone.
And there would be just no. So, I mean, to the extent that we're dealing with public records, to the extent that we're dealing with litigation holds that I talked to Colonel Edmondson about earlier, to the extent that we're talking about any of that stuff, I mean, I could just go ahead and.
No, sir. We didn't have any litigation holds or preservation orders at the time. We didn't have any. So there's not
Well,
that,
I mean,
that we were dealing with. I've dealt in situations before where a preservation hold was asked for on a phone, and we observed that and honored that. And then once the case was taken care of, then it was done.
Yeah, but I mean, in a case like this, when you know that there might be the anticipation of litigation, I mean, so you're telling me you were waiting for a specific order, you wouldn't be proactive in that?
Why would I anticipate litigation when I don't know what's going on with the case?
Somebody had an in custody death, and there was some issue as to use of force or potential abuse of force. You're telling me that you wouldn't? I mean, it wouldn't be reasonable to anticipate potential litigation from that?
It's possible.
It
There have
is.
been cases before when it hasn't happened, I'm sure.
And even in
But
those,
look, I keep answering the same questions over and over again as we go down the line. I explained to you that there was no nefarious purpose for the phones except to restore them to factory settings so they could be reissued to someone else. I have a phone. There's no nefarious here. You can ask me the same question 1,000 different ways, and the answer is going to be the same. But we keep covering this.
again, no, I'm not. Look, whether there was, I think whether there was a nefarious purpose is probably yet to be determined. But that being said, I'm okay if that's the position you want to take. That's not my point. I guess my point is, out of an abundance of caution, if you want to err on the side of caution, wouldn't you have preserved those phones? Or say it a different way. Wouldn't you have preserved the contents of the phones? And then we wouldn't have this issue. So whether there was a nefarious purpose or not, we would be able to see. That would be full transparency, and we would be okay with it all. We'd all be able to see it, and there'd be nothing left to debate. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yes.
All right. Now,
You ask me right now, I wish we had not restored the phones to factory settings, because this would be a non-issue, and you would see front and center there was nothing there.
Absolutely.
And I do wish that in hindsight.
Representative Jordan, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think our concern, the reason why I keep asking you and over again, is because as legislators, we realize that if we have a state-issued phone, that our messages are potential public records, and we're concerned that high levels of state police are not treating it as such. It's not like it's a regular trooper texting on his personal phone with his wife. We're talking about executive assistant or whatever to the state trooper's office, and there doesn't seem to be, I'm not saying it's nefarious, but it's concerning that you haven't had a seminar, a lawyer come in and talk to you about the preservation of records in investigations. I mean, this is not, you're being incredulous about it, but I also feel like this is honestly sort of shocking that y'all weren't made aware that you may have a document on your phone that could be part of a record or of an investigation that somebody wants to see later, and you would just go hit the button and restore the factory settings. I mean, that's why I think we've asked the question 85 times, is because it's sort of
I understand that, but
amazing.
my answer has not wavered with what my point was. And let me say this. It is my understanding that state police now has a policy concerning this. And as things generally work, there's a change agent that takes place. You don't pull ice. Ice in an icebox doesn't melt usually unless the power's cut off to it, and that's the change agent. You take it out and you put it in a glass, you pour water on it, and it starts to melt. There's a change agent that took place here, in which state police now has a policy on this.
I understand. We want to cover our bases, and I just want to clear that up. Representative Jordan, go ahead with your question.
No, that's fine. And look, and the fact that you do have a policy now, I think references, or at least recognizes, the importance of this matter and the concerns that we should have had. So I appreciate them now having a policy. So let me ask this then. So do you know what happens to those phones once they're wiped?
No, sir, I do not.
All right. Well, I know in your case you retired. Mike Noel, I assume, retired. Was Doug Kane ever reissued a state phone?
I don't know.
All right. Let me ask it this way. Does a trooper have the option not to get a state phone reissued to him and just use a personal phone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if he decided, I don't want a state phone anymore, I'm just going to use my personal phone, that would be okay by policy during your tenure?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, what was York's responsibility?
To investigate the crash.
To investigate the crash and the crash only?
The detectives are investigating the incident as a whole. York is a uniform patrol trooper. He's does crash investigations, so he's investigating the crash portion of it. The dynamics of the crash.
And so he wouldn't, part of his question, he wouldn't go beyond asking about the crash, or he wouldn't ask what else happened.
Well, we know he was on scene, so he knows what else happened. But he's doing a crash report to be, I guess, meshed with, for lack of a better term, with the criminal investigative report.
Right, which makes it even, and that was my point. I'm glad you brought that up. He was on the scene, so he saw some of this stuff. So why wouldn't he mention it in his report of all these other things that happened? I guess my concern is, why would he try to at least leave the impression that this man died in an accident when he was there? It wasn't like he was coming to the scene afterwards and having to recreate something. He actually saw some of this.
Well, sir, I think that Trooper York he'd be the only one that could accurately reflect what he was putting in his report and what he wasn't, and why he did what he wrote and what he didn't write what he wrote.
Right, but I guess when you...
I'm listening.
No, go ahead. I'll wait. I guess that's why I find it even more amazing that when you add the fact that York shut off a portion of his body camera, and for however long, and the fact that when you look at the video, that he basically dragged Ronald Greene while he was hogtied, in a sense, on his stomach. And then you look at his report, and his report certainly misleads at best the situation surrounding Ronald Greene's death. And then you tie all that together and you come to the conclusion that there was no cover-up. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, if you add all those things up, how do you stand by that statement?
I can't really respond to anything further about Trooper York because there is a federal investigation going on.
No, but you disciplined him, and you only disciplined him for 50 hours. So I am asking from your perspective, when you consider all those things, and you said you do have to review the file and somebody else puts it together, I'm also going to assume whether it was IA or whoever handles that did some type of investigation, knew that he misled on his report, knew that he turned his body camera off, knew that he dragged Ronald Greene hogtied on his stomach, and presented that information to you. I think that's a safe assumption for me to make. And if you reviewed that, I'm wondering how that only leads, and I know you said you didn't ask him why he turned his body camera off, but even with that, how that only leads to a 50-hour suspension.
That was the determination that we made.
Well, that was a determination you made,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because you said you're the ultimate decider on
I am
it.
the
So that
final
wasn't a
decision.
we, that was a
Right.
you.
No, that's the decision I made.
Okay. So, all right. Look, I'll just ask. I'll ask this last question, and I know it was reported that your retirement was already scheduled and was already planned. It was, and so just for the sake of the record, and we have you here, did the governor ever ask you to retire?
No, sir, he did not.
All right, that was of your own volition. That was already predetermined before any publicity or incident around Ronald Greene came to
Yes,
came
sir.
to focus.
I had communicated my intentions to them the year before.
All right. All right. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jordan. Representative Marcel.
Yes, just very briefly. I know you keep saying that you're not sure when you viewed it, whether it was, I think you said maybe September or October, the videos. Is that accurate?
When I
I just
first
want-
viewed it, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you all use Axon? Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you aware that in viewing the Axon videos, everyone that views an Axon video, such as the ones that you all have for the body cameras, that's date is logged in and date stamped and timed,
Yes, ma'am.
and you can see everybody's names. I want the committee to hear this. Everybody's name, whoever watched those videos, are listed with date stamped with times and their names. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
So
To
we
my
don't
knowledge.
really have to guess. We really could just get that information. Who keeps that information of the Axon? Who's the
I would probably think the business unit at headquarters.
at headquarters?
At LSP headquarters.
So we can stop asking that question, Mr. Chairman. We can just request that information,
Noted.
production of those documents from Axon, so we don't have to guess of what date or time you or anyone else accessed those videos. It's logged in.
Yes, ma'am.
Colonel Reeves, I appreciate you coming willingly today to testify. We would like to have a conversation about your notes and take your time. I mean, we're not trying to pressure you into
I
anything.
understand. I do have one last thing to say, if I may.
Sure.
Would that be okay?
Of course. You might get more questions, but
Well, I don't think this one will do a lot of questions. You know, sometime we'll all pass away, me included. And my religion tells me that I'll stand before God and I'll give an account for my life. And Lord knows I'll have a lot to account for. But I can tell you right now, I will not have to account for participating in a cover-up of the death of Mr. Ronald Greene. And I just want to say that in closing. Thank y'all. I respect the position that y'all are in. I respect what you're doing. And I hope that we will get an honest report in the end of your findings.
no, thank you. And look, I don't think we're trying to suggest that you did any cover up or anything like that. I think what we're trying to suggest is that there are issues with the investigation of Ronald Greene. I think maybe particular troopers may have engaged in conduct that is troubling, to say the least. And what level you knew about things is what we're trying to find out. And what were the steps in the mitigation? How much did you know? And were they, not to say that I I don't think we were ever trying to insinuate you hatched a nefarious plan from the get-go. I want that to be clear on the record. We do appreciate your service. We do appreciate you showing up today. We appreciate all the comments and you answering the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.